You know Big Will? He wrote something super smart. What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other name would smell just as sweet. Context. This Tata has a sweet name, but is it just as sweet to drive around in, to be driven around in, to be seen in? And as you know, every rose has its thorns. Which ones should you be wary of this one? Straight off the bat, this 3-row 7-seat SUV has a lot of appeal, doesn't it? Sweet. And that's the presence that the Safari has. As most of you would know that this is based on the Harrier, which means the width is the same, the wheelbase is the same, but there are two key differences. The height is more by 80 millimeters and well, the length is longer by 63 millimeters, all of which comes down to the longer tail here, which is also a lot more vertical. And to give it its own look and identity, it also has these different tail lamps with twin blade LEDs in them. And of course, being the Safari, we've got lines here. Roof rails, important for two reasons. One, if you choose the non-panoramic version, they actually are load carrying. But if you use the panoramic version, these are just aesthetic and help mask the additional height that the roof is packing. Glass area gets this kink up here to open up the amount of airiness for the passengers in the third row. And last but definitely not the least, the alloy wheels. 18 inches, which is a step more than ones on the Harrier, and they fill up the wheel wells nicer and of course are also bumping up the ground clearance for that SUV quotient. In terms of the basic design and the hardware on offer here, there's minimal changes to the face, but you can see that it does look more sophisticated and stately. That's thanks to the little additional touches of chrome like this cup here for the grille or for this surround for the headlamp pod. And of course, that tri-arrow chrome grille looks quite smashing. Sweet what they've done on the inside, because you've got these oyster finish for the seats and ashwood dash, which for the non-poetic people means black and white, black dash, white seats. And of course, to give it that little bit more in terms of, the techiness, there's an electronic parking brake to add to the sense of sophistication. You've got connected car technology now, you've got ambient lighting on offer, and of course you always have that beautiful JBL's sound system, which is just as awesome as ever. And of course, the thing that's crowning off this experience is the gigantic panoramic sunroof. The sunroof is massive, which means you might be tempted to Now the backseat of the Harrier was not something I'd complain about, for sure. And the Safari is going one up, actually 2 up on that. First and foremost, the panoramic sunroof really opens up the sense of space on the inside, and then there's the actual comfort on offer. These seats are much more supportive because they're mounted 30 millimeters higher than the ones on the Safari. So you just get better under thigh support. You end up being able to stretch out more if you're taller. And along with that, if you're taller, don't worry about headroom. There's 40 millimeters more headroom here on offer. And even now with the sunroof, you can see there's lots on offer. And if you're tall, well, you can stretch out that much more, right? And if you are in the boss mode, you've got this boss lever here. Just twist it forward, push that seat forward, and how's that for room to stretch out in, huh? And to cap that off, you also get recline adjustable backrests. The heart desires were the heart desires, and the sweetness of the captain seats, of course, will appeal to a lot of you. But should you go for it? Well, of course, there's the exclusivity and the added convenience of being able to access the third row through the middle here. And it's also because the captain seats don't tumble. But there are a couple of things to keep in mind. One, which may be on the plus for you, depending on how tall you are, is that these seats are another 10 mm higher where you sit. compared to even the bench version. Now this is fine for me, I get a great view out of the cabin, but if you're taller, if you're 6 feet tall, then your eye line will be going a fair bit higher up and might not feel all that comfortable. And that aside, the seat itself is a bit narrow, the cushioning is a bit firm, so if you're a larger person, then this might not be the most comfortable seats that you could choose in the Safari lineup. But the interesting thing to note is that these captain seats are only available on the top-end XZ Plus variant. Now back to the recommended bench version. Now access to the third row on this bench version is pretty straightforward. But what's missing here is what we saw on the buzzer, the grab handle here to help you hoist yourself in to make it a little bit easier. What is going to be easier is getting comfy, even for adults. I'm 5 feet 6, not all that tall, but you can see I've got a decent amount of headroom on offer. What's truly impressive is the amount of knee room on offer, and that's with this seat pushed all the way forward, which still gives me plenty of knee room in the middle row. Under thigh support could surely be better, but you're not being treated as a second-rate citizen here. Adjustable headrests, cup holders on both sides. You've got a dedicated air conditioning system for which you have the controls right here next to you, along with 2 aircon vents as well. And of course you have little cubbies here to store your phone, and very importantly, proper 3-point seat belts for both the occupants at the rear. As expected of a Tata, lots of safety features are standard, like electronics, like ESP, rollover mitigation, cornering stability control, hill hold, and when it comes to hardware, you have all-wheel disc brakes, ABS with EBD, ISOFIX mounts as standard. There's also 2 airbags from the base variant, but it's the top variant that gets 6 airbags. So there's lots to be thankful for when you hit the road.
Sometimes I feel I gotta run, pocket full of dreams, gotta make it for me and my team. When I leave, I'ma run.
Sweet, you're definitely going to say that when you get inside the Safari and get going, because you feel the Safari-ness here. And that's specially to do with the way the suspension works. You think that this is bigger, taller, heavier when compared to the Harrier, so it would be sloppier. But that's not the case. This actually behaves very neatly. It feels confident even at higher speeds, cruising on the highway, which was kind of like the Safari's home. This does that well, and at the same time it is comfortable. If you're going over bad roads, it gobbles those up as well, so that can be at low speeds, no roads, city roads, it deals with them. It's doubly sweet because not only is the Safari great to be driven around in, it's great to drive as well, because you can actually drive this pretty much right after you get into it like a car. You don't feel any hesitation while changing lanes. You can place it where you want. The steering is light, so changing directions, all of it, it does that just right. And for this, you might want to thank not the Rose, but a Lotus, the company that tuned the suspension setup. So this just feels really neat to drive. And along with that, of course, there's the complement also for the engine. Now this is the same state of tune as in the Harrier and comes with the same gearbox options as well. Now the engine itself, very drivable, giving you torque from under 2000 RPM, which makes it hassle-free to drive even with the 6-speed manual transmission. But keep in mind that the throws on this gearbox are long, and the clutch, well, that also has a long travel and will feel a bit heavy if you're driving in stop-go traffic all the time. Of course, you have the choice of the 6-speed manual transmission or the 6-speed automatic. The 6-speed manual is also fairly easygoing to live with because of the torquiness of this engine, but if you really want that one package that does it all, I'd have to say that's the 6-speed automatic, because it is smooth, it is quick, and it knows what you want and gets the gear shifts done. So it's hassle-free, it's convenient and fun. Now for the Safari Quotient, it's got terrain modes, wet and rough road. These are basically ESP based programs which optimize traction on offer for the front wheels. So I wouldn't recommend you try to reclaim your life with these. I think you'll agree that that's one sweet-smelling rose and you might want to go and grab one, but then watch out for the thorns. And there are some big ones. Like, where's the all-wheel drive at, bro? Now, you might say all-wheel drive, not all that important, agree. But for a lot of people living in the hills, rear-wheel drive, very important. And where's the petrol part? Now, when you've packed 7 people on board and go to keep luggage, that's when you're going to say, ouch, because then you have just about 73 liters of luggage here, which means only soft bags, and that too very few. But if you have a lot of luggage to carry, you're going to need roof rails. In which case, I'd remind you, do not opt for the panoramic sunroof option, because that means the roof rails that you've got aren't load bearing. But if you do choose for the panoramic sunroof option and you have to pack in luggage, pack in only 5 people, in which case you can drop one of these seats down in the 3rd row. They're 50-50 split. You could also drop the one down on the 2nd row, which opens up even more space, and then you'd be able to pack in a fair amount of luggage and people. On the inside, there's plenty of storage, but there are niggles like the USB port for the 2nd row, which is low and hidden. It is great that Tata has offered a 6-way power adjustable driver's seat here on the Safari, but if we compare with the competition, there are a few misses like ventilated seats, and in terms of conveniences, there's the wireless charging system for your cell phone. And if we look at the infotainment system itself, I won't complain about the size of the screen, while yes, a bigger screen would be nicer, but in terms of features, you have smaller cars now offering things like wireless Android Auto. And fine, even features can be given a miss, but it has to work smoothly. However, on that front, the touch responsiveness, just the responsiveness of the screen, although it is crisp, does feel a bit laggy, especially when you can connect it to your smartphone. The rest of our niggles may sound like stupid nitpicking, but we are a bit emotional about this Tata. Maybe it's because I'm short. I really loved how tall the OG Safari was, and this one isn't as much. I can't find the stepped roof. The rails make it look like it's stepped, but it's not. I think it's because of the sunroof. They had to add one. But you can have the Safari trademark, the stepped roof, albeit only with the non-sunroof versions. Before we start talking about flowers and fragrances, let's talk about the elephant in the room. To me, the Safari nameplate is kind of like Land Rover's Defender, which, even when it gets into a new generation, it remains traditional and simple, whereas the Safari has walked a different path. But when you look at the abilities of this Tata, the way it accommodates 7 passengers on board, the way it transports them with comfort, with confidence through the city, outside of it, and when you choose to wander off the beaten path, it'll trot along happily. So it may not be a Safari in form, but it certainly acquits itself in spirit. Of course, it isn't without its shortcomings. With 7 seats up, boot space is very tight, and in terms of features, to take the fight to the competition, it needed a little bit more of the wow factor, especially considering that this is the Safari nameplate making a comeback. Nonetheless, this is your new Safari, and it is certainly a sweet package. So should it be making its way to your garage? Well, you'll be able to decide that when it launches later this month.